Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Mackinlay, and for 18 years I was the Member of Parliament for Thurrock in Essex, a Labour Member of Parliament, but I'm pleased and proud to say that I had friendship right across the political spectrum, and I only wish that happened more, particularly in this day and age. Things seem to be so personally bitter. Rather sad. But why I have come to say hi to you today is because although I've been very lucky in my retirement and had a great deal of satisfaction both from a family point of view and from a public service point of view, particularly working closely with friends in Gibraltar, I've had a great time, but am like so many people watching this video, were shocked and surprised when a consultant said, "I have to tell you that you're suffering from the early stages of Parkinson's disease." That was a surprise and a shock, but it's not the end of the world, and many of us are determined to have a full life and it not to be in any way terminated by the Parkinson's disease, but tempered by careful medication and good advice and good counselling and training in a number of areas, one of which is speaking. You can understand that public speaking and the ability to throw my voice was extremely important to me when I was in the House of Commons and in public life, in the trade unions, etc. And I have identified that my voice is a lot weaker now, and I hope I don't lose it, the diction and the mental capacity to frame the right words at the right time, basically for the brain to coincide with the mouth. I'm working on that, and I've had some support and training organised by the Parkinson branch in Sutton, Kingston, Merton and Richmond and Elmbridge. Very good Parkinson Society. But public speaking is extremely important to me. I wasn't very successful at school, but I did practice debating. And also as a young man, I remember being elected as a councillor to Kingston Council, which had a most massive, very long council chamber to accommodate 70 members. And it had no microphones. And in my early 20s, I would be an important part of the Kingston Labour opposition and make speeches where I had to throw my voice both that way and that way. And I shall always be grateful for that. Many years later, I went back to the chamber to be shocked to find that they'd greatly reduced the size of the chamber and they all had microphones. I think that even today, people should be encouraged to practice public speaking, to throw their voice to the back of the hall of the church or council chamber or House of Commons. It would make sense, and certainly I benefited from the training which one or two people gave to me and my own initiative. And I can tell you a story. I wasn't, to say the least, a successful student at school, and I had problems of obedience or behavioural difficulties. And every Friday, our head teacher had our class, and he would set us some prose or poem or rhyme to learn for the next coming week. And every Friday I would humiliate myself by not having done the homework, not having prepared. And he would walk into the stony faced into the class saying, "Mackinlay, out the front." And I would stammer and stutter and hesitate. And he would say, "Sit down, fool." And I was humiliated largely by my own inability to put a little effort into learning the public speaking, which had been set for us. But one day he came in and he set some lines of Churchill, Winston Churchill, and I couldn't believe my luck. I thought, God, I know those words. And from that Friday to the following Friday, I just begged Almighty God that he would ensure that the headmaster came in as usual, says Mackinlay out the front, and asked me to recite the words of Churchill. The Friday came, he marched in stony-faced, Mackinlay out the front, and out I went. And I thought, I'm going to give it my very best shot. And I paused for a moment, looking both ways, and said, "The gratitude of every home in our island, in the empire, and indeed throughout the world, except in the abodes of the guilty, goes out to the British airmen who, undaunted by the odds, unwearied in their constant challenge and mortal danger, are turning the tide of this war by their prowess and by their devotion. Never before in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." When I completed my recitation, there was momentarily the class was silent, and then it broke into applause, genuine applause, which I haven't received much of for the rest of my life. But I was pumping the air, and the head teacher said, "Sit down, Mackinlay, sit down." And I always remembered this. Some 40 years later, I met the head teacher by chance in the United States, and I told him about this, and we did laugh. He maintained he couldn't remember. Anyway, learning Churchill, being inspired by the speeches of John F. Kennedy, particularly his inaugural address, by the profoundly moving speeches of Martin Luther King and others, I have practiced and practiced and practiced to try and remember the script, the message which is conveyed by these great orators, and although very inadequately, to bring it into my own performance, my speeches as a politician and somebody in public life. That particular episode came to me when, in the early 90s, I got up in the House of Commons and said that Poland, Hungary and the Czech Republic should be encouraged, allowed, facilitated to come into the European Union and NATO. And clearly there were some people, left and right, who thought I was completely bonkers. And I then referred to that speech by Winston Churchill. I said, if the few who Winston Churchill referred to, who fought above this parliament, upstairs in the sky, were critical in terms of turning the tide of war, those brave pilots, Poles, did 17% of the kills. And the Czech pilots similarly contributed with great zeal and great courage and bravery. Those pilots earned for their grandchildren the right to be participants in democracies and enjoy market economies. And I've always proud of the fact that before it was fashionable, I argued for these countries and the Baltic countries to be admitted into European Union and North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Now, I enjoy looking at speeches even to this day, and sometimes there's some very, very good ones. And I think that we should encourage young people to practice and to practice and to practice. It's a sport or an entertainment which one can do all your life, carefully framing it, polishing it off, making it a worthwhile recreation. And it certainly in recent months has helped me to try and find, when I'm making a speech, trying to find the word which in a few seconds later I will want to use. If I do find that it's not just diction, which is the problem with Parkinson's, it's those microseconds when you are knowing you want to refer to a particular place or person, but are unable to recall it instantly in the way one used to. Anyway, that's my little story, and it was prompted by the fact that the wonderful organisers of the Movers and Shakers are rightly leading all of us in a campaign to try and get from the government more resources, both in terms of combating, research combating Parkinson's, and also the needs of people for help and training, and particularly when it comes to diction, public speaking, communicating with carers. And I hope to join any of their activities which may pressurise this Parliament and this government to provide the resources for our section of the community, the Parkinson's community. If you would like, I will come back and do some more recitation of Churchill or Kennedy or Roosevelt or Martin Luther King. We can join in together. Thank you very much. God bless. Bye-bye.